The central coast of California is home to many living organisms, some of which have spectacular genus. Let's take a look at these organisms. Beneath the surface of the water lies an armored creature, protected in a strong exoskeleton. It looks for food. It's a Dungeness crab, an omnivore, named after the appearance of their habitat, a shallow, sandy bay within a Dungeness spit. But this isn't the only place Dungeness crabs like to hang out. You'll sometimes find them on the beach attempting to grab a quick bite before heading back out to sea. It is fascinating how these crabs are capable of surviving on their own, capable of fending off enemies that try to attack them, as their entire exoskeleton is like a suit of armor. The crab is satisfied with its meal and ready to return home. But the crab is not alone. It is accompanied by a flock of seagulls. The crab's exoskeleton armor is capable of protecting itself from several other different threats, but it doesn't stand a chance against this many seagulls. In a hurry, the crab must get back into the water where it's safe. The crab is now hidden and off the menu, for now. This leaves the seagull with an empty belly. Hopefully it can find another morsel as a source of food. Luckily it has done just that. Seagulls are omnivores. They'll consume pretty much anything. This includes berries, seeds, fish, shellfish, and even human food. It should be noted that feeding wildlife human food is a bad practice and should never be done. Upon eating human food, their diet is affected and they begin to rely on humans as producers of food, thus resulting in even more negative consequences. The mussel, a semi-carnivorous shellfish, relies heavily upon plankton. Plankton, being one of the many producers of the coastal desert, use photosynthesis to create energy, allowing them to survive. Mussels and many other organisms will then consume the plankton. What's for dinner? Mussels. Now that we have explored the sandy beaches of the coastal desert, let's take a look at the grassland. Deer, one of the many herbivores of the environment, rely heavily upon the grassland as a source of food, as well as berries. Since we're on the topic of herbivores, let's talk about one that lives in the sea. Sea turtles are actually omnivores in the early stages of life, but when they become adults, they also become herbivores. Sea turtles primarily eat seagrasses and algae, but sadly, sea turtles are a mostly endangered species that are threatened by humans due to pollution that we humans are tossing into the ocean, destroying their nesting. While we're on the topic of algae are both producers and autotrophs. Algae is actually an informal term that refers to a large, diverse group of photosynthetic eukaryotic organisms. Some of the different types of algae include diatom, wakame bladderwrack, and Irish moss. But these types are only a few out of a large group. Sea snails are herbivores that live in salt water and eat plant matter, mainly algae. Like algae, another producer is cacti. Cacti can be found in most deserts around the world, including most coastal deserts. They can be many different shapes and sizes. They could be short, tall, or even have many branches. In order for cacti to survive, they need to live in a habitat with barely any water that could be subjected to drought. Cacti are known to be succulents, plants that reserve water in themselves. The spines on the cacti are not only for defending against herbivores, but they are also used to prevent water loss as well as provide what little shade they are able to give. There are also edible cacti and fruits that grow on them. Now let's look at another organism in the coastal desert. Jackrabbits are another species of herbivore that live in the coastal desert. Jackrabbits mainly eat vegetation that includes shrubs, small trees, grasses, and forbs.
Seaweed is a plant that grows along the coast of the desert, mostly around rocky shores like this one. Seaweed is widely eaten in the ecosystem. It's eaten by crabs, jackrabbits, deer, and more. One of the animals that eats algae are kangaroo rats. Kangaroo rats developed their name due to the manner in which they hop on, which is very similar to an actual kangaroo. However, unlike the kangaroo rat gets bullied by the other animals, like the jackrabbit. Now that we know what herbivores eat, we must ask the question, what eats herbivores? The eagle is one of the few carnivore animals that live on the coastal desert. The eagle is a heterotroph as well as a consumer, and it eats almost every animal it sees as long as it's hungry and not threatened. Now that we've taken a look at the carnivore that rules the air, let's take a look into the ocean. Sea lions are carnivorous animals that live in the coastal desert. They mainly feast upon any animal that may be in the sea, such as squid, fish, and krill. A lot of people get confused by the differences between seals and sea lions. Sea lions can actually walk on land, and they have external ear flaps, while seals have small flippers and lack visible ear flaps.
Now that we have taken a look at some of the different organisms within the coastal desert, let's take a closer look at the desert and see how the different organisms interact with one another. Dung beetles, one of the few decomposers within the coastal desert, have a interaction of commensalism with many other animals within the coastal desert. This interaction between the beetle and the other animal is due to the beetle sustaining itself with the other animal's dung, benefiting the beetle, but not harming the other animal in any way. Hermit crabs roam near the coastal side of the coastal desert, looking for shelter in discarded shells from various different animals, such as snails and other crabs. These hermit crabs benefit off of taking discarded shells of the animals, helping the crab but not endangering the other animal in any way, and like dung beetles, this is a type of commensalism. These hermit crabs are able to keep their shells on due to their long abdomens and long legs on said abdomen. They are used to keep the shell attached while the hermit crab roams around. Fish, namely salmon, share two different types of interactions with sea lice. Sea lice are small parasitic crustaceans that feed on the fish to sustain themselves. In this situation, the sea lice, or the parasite, is benefiting off of the fish, or the host, that is being damaged. This is also a showing of mutualism between two organisms. Coyotes are the most dominant species on the coastal desert. This may be due to the fact that there are many carnivores on the coastal desert that could stand up to a carnivorous mammal. The only animal that eats the coyotes are eagles, and that's only when the coyotes are already dead. This makes them on top of the food chain and dominates over every other different living organism on the coastal desert. Mediterranean grass is an exotic species found on the coastal desert. This grass originated from Eurasia and is now fairly widespread throughout many deserts. This grass is an annual type of grass which grows in small clumps and usually in cold temperatures, which makes it fairly widespread within coastal deserts.
Along with the species that live in the coastal desert, we have the people who visit it. With the people come food and waste that is left on the ground or in the sea. Humans have always been prone to pollute, especially in the ocean, causing danger to the coastal desert's environment. Along with the people, there are always going to be natural disasters occurring in or around coastal deserts everywhere. For example, there are tidal waves and tornadoes, which can both harm the environment very much. While coastal deserts are very beautiful, they are in danger, mainly from people. Natural disasters we cannot stop, but people we can. So let's get a move on.